Welcome, everybody, to another Pivotal Power Half Hour. Today, we'll be continuing our study in Genesis. We're going to go to Genesis 4. That's where we left off, the first verse from last time. Just a small recap. Last time we talked about the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what actually happened in the garden, how it was not eating an apple, how it's widely taught, but it's not eating an apple because that's not stated. So here we're going to start with Genesis 4:1, and we're going to start going through these verses, and we're going to kind of show who Cain came from, and we're going to look at other verses in other books of the Bible that confirm what we're thinking happened in the garden. So as we look in Genesis 4:1, let's start reading. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Now let's stop there. Let's look at that word knew, to know. So here the word knew is a euphemism because she conceived after he knew her. Just like in Genesis 3:3, there was a euphemism about eating of the fruit, that you shouldn't eat of the fruit or touch it. Those are both euphemisms in Genesis 3:3. Here we go, a euphemism in Genesis 4:1 in the word knew. And she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So as we look here, she again bare. That word again means to add, augment, to continue to do a thing. So here we see that both Cain and Abel were twins, not identical twins, but fraternal twins. And what that means is fraternal twins, if you're not aware, most of you probably are, that means two separate eggs were fertilized with two separate sperm. And these that she had, Cain and Abel, are going to come from two different fathers, which that is possible. You can look it up online, check with doctors, but that is possible for there to be two separate fathers of fraternal twins in the womb. So let's continue. And verse 3, and in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord, and Abel, this is verse 4, he also brought the firstlings of his flock and the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. So here we see that our thought of them being both twins is correct, because here's another confirmation. They both bring offerings to the Lord where they must be coming of age at the same time. And Cain just brings some of what he has, not the first, not the best. But Abel, he brings the best. He brings the first part to the Lord, and the Lord respected that for Abel. So in verse 5, but unto Cain and to his offering he had no respect. This is talking about God had no respect for it. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. So he was very upset that God did not really accept his offering. But we're going to understand that if he would have brought the first, just like Abel, the Lord God would have accepted it. And the Lord God said in verse 6 unto Cain, why are you wroth, and why is your countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. So here God is saying to Cain, if you do what's right, I'm going to accept it. But if you don't, I'm not. Which is very basic in thinking. He didn't bring the best like Abel did, like he was supposed to. He just brought some of what he had brought from the ground for an offering. So this did not make Cain very happy. He was very upset. And so we continue in verse 8. Let's scroll up. And Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. That word slew, of course, means to smite with deadly intent, to murder. So he murdered his brother. He murdered his brother. He had intent to murder his brother. He did it. And the Lord said unto Cain, so this after this has happened, verse 9, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? So here he's lying to God. God knows everything. God knows what happens, but he is lying to God. And he said, what hast thou done? This is God. The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall be henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. So here God is giving him his punishment for murdering his half-brother, and we're going to document that in a little bit through verses of the New Testament. And Cain said unto the Lord in verse 13, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth. From the face shall I be hid. From thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. So hold up. So if there is just Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, who are these other people that are going to find Cain and kill him? Because all that we've talked about right now, that Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. Those are only the four. If we go by traditional teachings, those are the only four on the earth. Who are these other people that are going to kill him? Well, this confirms what we were thinking, what we taught back in Genesis 1, that there were other people that were created before Adam and Eve, that there were other people on the earth. All the races God created on the sixth day and saw that they were very good. So this confirms that, because who are these other people that are going to kill him? Let's continue. Verse 15, and the Lord said unto him, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. So here is a mark that is put on Cain. Where else in the Bible have we heard about the mark or a mark put on people? Go way back to Revelation, the mark of the beast. So here we have from foreshadowing about what's to come. So to continue, let's go to 16. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden, and Cain knew his wife. Let's stop right there. So he found a wife in the land of Nod, but I thought it was just Cain, Abel, Adam, and Eve. So where did this wife come from? So here's another confirmation that there were other people created before Adam and Eve, because God looked and he didn't have a tiller for the land. He made all these other people, but he didn't have somebody to till. So he had to make Adam. So here's another confirmation that there were others that were created. The races were created on the sixth day, and God was very pleased with that. So here we're going to go through the genealogy then, of Cain down through Cain's line. And after we get to the bottom, then we're going to look up different scriptures that'll give us confirmations of what we're thinking of where Cain came from, not from Adam, but from somebody else the serpent that was in Genesis 3, who is not actually a serpent, but a person, and not as a flesh person, a person in the flesh, but an angelic being. So Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. This is verse 17. And he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehuel, and Mehuel begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. And Lamech took unto him two wives, and the name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. Let's scroll up. And Ada bare Jabal, or Jabal. He was the father of such dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle, and his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ, so he was a musician. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, the instructor of every artificer of brass and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold, which God determines that, not Tubal-Cain. Right there we'll stop. These are the lineage of Cain here in Genesis 4. It goes through his sons. And if you compare Genesis 4 and his sons' names with Seth, who we're going to get to in a little bit, in Genesis 5, that's listed in Adam's genealogy, there are a lot that are similar, but not quite the same. Satan always likes to do things very similar, to trick people of the truth. Just like he is called the Antichrist, it doesn't mean the opposite Christ. It means the instead of. He wants to proclaim himself as Christ, as we read in 2 Thessalonians 2, where he sits in the temple of God saying that he is God. He always wants to be that imitation that's close to the original, but not quite. So here we're going to continue through the end of Genesis 4, and we're going to read the last two verses, and then we're going to go to other scriptures to see if there's other places in the Bible where God confirms what we're thinking about, what we're teaching here, as who Cain's father was and where Cain came from. So in Genesis 4:25, and Adam knew his wife again. Here's that word knew, another euphemism. He knew his wife is a euphemism for something else, because she's going to bear a son. Just like touching and eating of the fruit is a euphemism. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So why would she need another seed to take the place of Abel if Cain was Adam and Eve's son? Just because he killed him wouldn't mean that the bloodline would not come through him, through what Christ would come, because Eve is the mother of all living. She is the mother through which the umbilical cord, through her family, Christ would come. And if Cain was Adam and Eve's child, why would they need a replacement? And to Seth, verse 26, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. So here we have a replacement for Abel in another son named Seth. And as we read in Genesis 5, through Adam's genealogy, Seth is listed, Cain is not. Now, why is Cain not listed in Adam's genealogy? Let's look at some verses that are in the New Testament, and we'll look and see how this corresponds to what we're thinking happened in the garden and with the serpent, Satan, and Eve. Because in verse, I believe it was Genesis 3:15, when it said, thy seed and her seed, the seed is the same thing, progeny, children. So the serpent's seed, children, the serpent's children, and her children. So who are the serpent's children? Let's look in Matthew 12. So go Matthew 12, verse 33 and 34. So this is Jesus talking to the Pharisees, because if we skip up to verse 24, it says, but when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. And Jesus knew their thoughts and said unto them, so this is Jesus speaking to the Pharisees. And if we go down, we're going to skip down to just verse 33 and 34. You can read through the rest of the verses before that, but I just want to highlight these. In verse 33, it says, either make the tree good and his fruit good, or else make the tree corrupt and his fruit corrupt, for the tree is known by his fruit. Here it's giving reference to people being as trees and what kind of fruit they give. Kind of like in the garden. The tree of knowledge of good and evil was an actual being, not a tree. And then Jesus says, O generation of vipers. A viper is a snake. Adder, a poisonous snake. How can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart and the mouth, and out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So he's saying this word generation, and he's talking to the Pharisees, generation, offspring of vipers. So you offspring of the snake, of snakes, of the snake. Who was a snake in the garden? Who was a serpent in the garden? Who is called the serpent? Satan. And he's saying, you offspring of Satan. Is he really saying that? Let's look at another verse. Matthew 23. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, scribes and Pharisees again. And here, let's look at verse 31. And we'll read and see what it says. So this is Jesus talking. Wherefore, you be witnesses unto yourselves that you are the children of them that killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you generation of vipers, you serpents. Is that what I think it means? A snake? Malicious person, especially Satan. You generation, you family of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel, Cain and Abel. So who killed Cain, or who killed Abel? It was Cain, right? Okay, so he's saying they're from Cain's lineage, his family. You generation of vipers, you serpents, a snake, especially Satan. You generation from Satan. Your family's from Satan. You were a murderer. You murdered all these people, murdered Abel. He's pointing out that their lineage is through Cain, and Cain's lineage is through the wicked one, the serpent, Satan. And if that's not enough, let's go to 1 John. 1 John in the New Testament, 1 John 3:12. And it says, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him, because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. So here it says Cain was of the wicked one, was from the family of the wicked one. Cain was the seed of Satan. Okay? Let that sink in a little bit. Well, I still don't know about Jesus talked about. Let's also go to another scripture about that. John 8:39. So this is Jesus again speaking to the Pharisees. And let's just start in verse 39 and go to 44. So they said, these are the Pharisees, said unto him, Abraham is our father. And Jesus said unto them, if you were of Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. But now you seek to kill me, a man that hath told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. You do the deeds of your father. And listen to their response. Then said they unto him, we be not born of fornication. We all know what fornication means. Adultery. So who is the first adulterer? What happened in the garden? They're saying, whoa, we're not born of fornication. We have one Father, even God. Jesus said unto them, if God were your Father, you would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Because you cannot hear my word. I'm just setting you because it's easier to understand. You are of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning. I don't remember Satan murdering anybody. I believe that was Cain. So if he says you're the devil and then he was a murderer, I think he's combining the two. Cain, the son of Satan, because of the sin in the garden. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. Who's the father of lies? Satan. Who is the first murderer? Cain. All these verses that we're reading are referring to a generation, a family from that. There is only one way you can take this, that you are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. If you look at the world right now, there are those in high places that they say they are Jews and are not, and are of a synagogue of Satan. This is in Revelation. In Revelation, it talks, God speaks to John and shows John what's going to happen in the future. And he speaks to the 7 churches, and only 2 of the churches he had no fault with. That was Smyrna and Philadelphia. And they both taught the same thing, that those that say they are Jews but are not, they are of the synagogue of Satan. The synagogue is the bloodline of Satan, because just like in Genesis 3, it said that his seed and her seed, there's going to be enmity between the two. That doesn't mean the seed of snakes. That means the seed, the progeny, the children of the devil, and the progeny, the children of Eve, which through Eve came Jesus. So do you see how these verses are lining up together? And we can see that these that the Pharisees were taken over because they were supposed to be of the Levitical priesthood, the sons of Levi. But if we look, let's look in Ezra. It talks about those. Let's go to Ezra. Ezra, I'm kind of going all over the place, but I think we need to hammer this in. Ezra 2, 58 and 59. This is the exile return. So they were taken to Babylon. They are returning from Babylon right now. And if we go down to verse 58, it says, all the Nethinims, which are the temple helpers, temple servants, and the children of Solomon's servants were 392. And these were they which went up from Tel Melah and Tel Harsa, Cherub, Aden, and Immer, but they could not show their father's house and their seed, whether they were of Israel. So here we have these Nethinims coming back from exile, and they can't prove that they're Israelites. So who are they? Who are these people? Who are these Nethinims? Well, if we look in 1 Chronicles 2, 55, this is talking about a genealogy of David, but then at the end, it talks about the families of the scribes. So the families of the scribes of the temple, and the families of the scribes which dwelt at Jabez, the Tirathites, the Shimeathites, the Succothites. These are the Kenites. Let's look up Kenites. A Kenite, member of the tribe of Cain. Let's go to their. There we go. The first child, Cain. The Kenites come from Cain. They overtook the scribes, the Nethinims. They overtook the Pharisees and became Pharisees themselves when they weren't supposed to. And then Jesus calls them out in Matthew 12, 23, John 8, which we just read. All those places he calls them out for who they are. And they say, wait, we're not born of fornication. We're not born of adultery. But they were. They knew exactly who they were. Just like if you don't know this from the beginning, you're never going to understand what happens in the end times if you don't know this right now. And that's why it's so important that we get this solidified in our minds and in our spirits and understand what really happened in the beginning. Because if we don't understand that, we won't understand what's happening and what's going to happen in the end times. And it's sad that this isn't taught in a lot of churches today throughout the country, throughout the world. There are some that do. There are some good churches that do. But if you look at this and it gives you confirmation after confirmation, and Jesus even speaks about it and calls them what they are and who they are. It's so important because once you understand that, it locks in other scriptures to help you understand different parts of the Bible. And it just flows together so graciously. Our God was so good to give us the word, to tell us exactly what had happened, what's going to happen, and gave us so many examples of that. But we need to understand this foundation, this beginning on what had happened, because once we understand that, it's like the Bible opens up and you understand what's going on. And if you don't believe that an angel can have a baby on the earth, we're going to be reading in Genesis 6 in Noah's time when the angels came down and they married women of men and they had giants in the earth. So I think that's a good place to stop. I'll put all these passages here again at the end. Go check them out for yourself. There again, don't believe me. Read it for yourself. Ask God for his wisdom, the Holy Spirit to guide you. We'll see you next time. Stay in God, he'll stay in you. See ya.